What do you say, everybody? Hope you're having a great evening. It's time for Monday Night Quarterback. It's presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. A hot dog from the concession stands to the roof, the Skygate Club where you see Clint and I hanging out. After the game on game days, breaking down all the matchups. But you can check it out as well. They're the great sponsor of our program, 1 to 5 bedroom units. And they're fantastic. Next time you come to town, you need to swing over to Westgate Luxury Condominiums. All right, we got a lot to talk about on the show. And great to see you, Clint. What's up, bro? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Nick. How you doing, man?
Look, man, I'm doing well. Yeah, I made the circuit. I'm sure you made the circuit today across the state talking about Alabama's coordinator hires. But we haven't made the circuit together yet talking about the coordinator hires. So let's get into this right off the bat, out of the show. Your thoughts on a new offensive coordinator, Tommy Reese out of Notre Dame, and a new defensive coordinator who's kind of an old defensive coordinator. It's been around, Kevin Steele. We stole him from Miami.
It is a former Alabama defensive coordinator, so he had that part pegged. Wasn't Jeremy Pruitt, but we still had the former coordinator part. I like both hires, and I'll continue to reiterate this. I understand a lot of fans aren't as thrilled about either of them. I don't think that it's like, it might not be the flashy additions on either side of the ball, but I think they were both needed, and they both make sense, especially when you put them together, right? I think age, young offensive coordinator, veteran, older defensive coordinator, you've got at least one of them that's familiar with the program, understands how things are going to operate under Nick Saban. You wouldn't want to have two completely new guys that you're trying to kind of get comfortable throughout the spring, and that's going to be a lot of your off season is spent getting players comfortable with both of those guys, and getting both of those guys comfortable with your coaching staff and their new environment, and their families are making moves, and it's a process. And so having Kevin Steele join the staff when he's already kind of comfortable and familiar with Tuscaloosa and Nick Saban and the way that he's going to operate, I think that's beneficial. I think that, the fact that they're getting a run heavy, offensive minded guy, that doesn't mean run heavy means that they're going to be completely unbalanced and it's going to be running the football too much. I think you're going to see an offense that's effectively able to throw the football and run the football. And I think that's really going to help and take pressure off of that defense. So I like both the hires. Like I said, I know a lot of people aren't thrilled with them, but to me, it makes a lot of sense.
Look, as you guys hang out, I'm going to tell you my thoughts and get Clint's opinion on what I think, but we want to hear what you guys think in the comments section. Throw those comments up there. Thank you for hanging out with us, as always, here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. See you, Yo Raider and Dean and Jeff and John, all you guys, man. Thank you for being here tonight. Roll Tide to you too. As we talk Alabama football and maybe a little basketball on a Monday night in the offseason, but talking about these hires. But like, subscribe, give it the thumbs up, and hit the bell so you know anytime we're live with shows. When these broke, there you go. You had Clint and Kyle, and they're out there immediately talking about the hire and what it means for Alabama. You guys, maybe you weren't there. Hit that bell so you know. And next time when anything breaks and we're on it, you'll be there with us. All right, look, I agree with you, okay? And you know me, if I didn't, I would say that, right? The offense had to get more creative. It just had to. And I feel like it still needs to be a little bit more basic at the same time, right? Run the damn ball. You got to be able to do both. You can be creative and run the ball at the same time. And Tommy Reese is going to bring that. This is a guy that was a hot commodity. He didn't go with Brian Kelly to LSU, probably could have. Other teams were talking about him last year as an OC, and he's leaving now. And look, it's what Alabama got. There wasn't a Lane Kiffin or a Steve Sarkisian floating around out there. We had Bill O'Brien. That didn't work as well as we hoped it would. I didn't say it was a failure, but the creativeness wasn't there. This is a younger guy that's going to bring in, kind of that young energy, and I think that's a good thing. Kevin Steele is not Jeremy Pruitt, but he's pretty damn close, and we needed somebody like that to bring this defense back to where it was before we kind of got to where we were, right? Which is just outside of the top 10 or maybe in the bottom of the top 10 and needing to be a little bit more aggressive, but disciplined, more confident. This guy's been around the block. That the last year, those guys saying they were worried about losing at Tennessee and nervous in the tunnel, that was concerning because that's just not Alabama. And so I really feel like he's going to bring that confidence back and some swag and been there, done that type feel.
Well, I think that your defense is going to reflect its leadership and its coaching staff. And it's nothing against Pete Golding. He's got his own certain style and way of doing things, and he's going to get the opportunity to showcase that in Oxford. But with Kevin Steele, he's kind of a no nonsense kind of guy, and he doesn't mind mixing things up with you and getting in your face and telling you that you're wrong and telling you where you can improve and telling you that you're not living up to the standard. And I talked about this a little bit before, but kind of that younger generation, like myself, like Pete Golding, how much of it is trying to be Guy's best friend when you really need to be their coach and more of a father, mentor type of person. Now, granted, on the offensive side of the football, you got the exact opposite with a 30-year-old offensive coordinator. But at the same time, I think that there's enough there to where that's going to work out and be just fine. I think he brings the edge offensively that Alabama really needs, and I think Kevin still brings that edge defensively. I think he's going to simplify things enough or help Nick Saban simplify things enough where the natural talent that's already on the roster that should give you an advantage. It's almost like Alabama at times got too cute defensively when you had other, 95% of the programs or teams that you're playing, you had them out athleted, right? I guess is the way to put it. I don't even think that's a word, but Alabama clearly had more talent than anybody that they stepped on the field with, other than, a select few programs. And yet they were trying to get creative and do a lot of crazy different stuff. And it just simply didn't work. And I think Kevin Steele is more of, let's get back to the basics. Let's tackle well. Let's play with a chip on our shoulder. If you know what you're doing and you're confident in what you're doing, you're going to play a lot more aggressively. And so I think that that's certainly going to help. And then, with Reese on offense, I think it's the perfect complement. I think that the defense is going to benefit from having that style offensively. But it's like I was talking about earlier on the Bama on 3 show with Jimmy Stein. I think it's about efficiency. I don't think that we should be overly concerned with, the offense scoring less points. If you're putting up points at the same rate that you were as far as, efficiency and, how many times are we touching the football and how many times are we putting the football in the end zone? How many times are we kicking field goals? If that's relatively the same, but you're extending drives and it's taking you longer to get there, that's less time for the opposing offense to be on the field. And so they're going to score less points as a result if you can maintain your defensive efficiency as well. So I think that the two are going to work extremely well together. And I think Alabama as a whole is really going to benefit from both of these hires.
What are you hearing about Jeremy Pruitt?
It's really interesting because I have, I think everybody that had sources and stuff behind the scenes had heard Jeremy Pruitt was the number one candidate for Nick Saban in Alabama. And obviously with all the NCAA stuff, the fact that, all the allegations and the punishment for that and all that, it hadn't been brought down yet. So we don't really know. He's kind of stuck in limbo waiting. Nick Saban can't afford to wait. And he certainly doesn't want to make a hire and then something, drop and it kind of throws a wrench in things. So it makes sense. I've heard the reports about Kevin Steele potentially being a placeholder for Jeremy Pruitt until he gets cleared. That would make a lot of sense. But, the first step in this process, probably, if I had to guess, would be getting Jeremy Pruitt on the staff as some sort of analyst. And until that happens, we can't say one way or another definitively what his role is going to be or where he's at. But, it's looking like that is a possibility.
You think Kevin Steele would do that?
Yeah. At this point in his career, now granted, it's crazy to think about. I think he's like 64, 65. Mm-hmm. So he's, to me, he looks a little older than Nick Saban. But he's actually quite a bit younger, 6 years, 7 years. So, yeah, it's certainly possible. It would be kind of weird for a lot of people to say, okay, you're going to come over from a Power 5 school like Miami. You're trying to build something there to be essentially a placeholder for Nick Saban.
Right.
That might seem strange to a lot of people, but if he's kind of nearing the end and he's considering retirement, who knows what would happen? I mean, I could totally see that being a scenario. I'm not going to sit here and say that's a guarantee by any means, but it's a possibility, and that's kind of the way I'll approach it until something, there's more movement on that front.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, guys, if you want to hang out with Clint like we're doing here, you don't have to wait for Monday Night Quarterback. All you got to do is go to the Bama Insider YouTube channel, and you can watch him on replays. Or if you want to be there with him all the time, go to BamaInsider.com. Yep, $29.99 from now until August 31st. Clint and Jimmy, they double team the message board all day long. They're on there. They want to hear from you guys. And some of you probably already know that because you're part of it. But if you haven't joined yet, do it. $29.99 until August, or $9.99 a month. And that's, from now until August 23rd. So you guys have a lot of fun there. And I'm sure that the message board, just like our message board here tonight, has been bubbling with speculation on who the hires would be. And then, they got them done. Grade the hires.
With Kevin Steele, I would probably call it a B. But with the familiarity with Nick Saban, the fact that you were kind of looking to get, to recapture maybe some previous edge, edginess or mentality, I think that this certainly accomplishes that. But I think, Tommy Rees, to me, I think he's a B plus. I'm not going to give either of these hires an A at this particular time, but I feel very confident and comfortable with both of them. And Reese, I would probably think a little bit more highly of, because I think he's got a little bit, he's in the plans a little bit more long term. I think that the approach that he's going to bring offensively, like Nick Saban's going to have an input on offense and defense, but the offense is obviously going to be a lot more of the coordinators than defense, which is where, Nick Saban's a defensive minded guy. But Reese brings a much needed mentality. I like his ability to develop quarterbacks. I think he did some really good things with Ian Book. Was he a first round top 10, NFL draft pick? No, but he's a fourth round guy. He was undersized at 6 foot, 6'1". He didn't have incredible arm strength. He was a former 3-star recruit, and he turned him into an NFL player. I think that's a pretty big deal. And so you look at some of the ultra talented quarterbacks that Alabama has, and you say, okay, if he can do that with Ian Book, how good can he get some of these other guys? Like I said, I just think that there was a much needed shift in mentality, whether it be, the offensive line, bullying people and controlling the line of scrimmage and getting downhill and being physical, having that, make you quit mentality. All those things were much needed. And I think Tommy Rees brings that, but I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot sacrificed as far as the passing attack. Like, it's going to be some different elements. It's going to play off of the run. Obviously, it's not going to be a pass-first offense. But I think that, if they have enough success running the football, they're going to be able to play off of that. They're going to be able to take shots downfield. They've got much better receivers than a Georgia, program right now. And so I think that they could maybe even become a better version of Georgia by going about it this way.
Yeah. Did they upgrade?
Upgrade.
The coordinators. Is this an upgrade from what they had?
I think so, yeah. It's with Bill O'Brien, it always felt like it's all about how do you strain defenses. Like, talent is going to do that if you've got enough of it, but how do you go about complementing that talent? Like, are you doing it through, a balanced approach, an offensive attack that can beat you both through the air and on the ground? Are you doing it by scheming up and creating opportunities for certain players? Is it pre-snap motions or shifts? Like, what are you doing to put strain on a defenses? And I feel like Bill O'Brien, really, it was just he relied way too much on the talent to do that. And I think Tommy Rees is going to put a lot more strain on opposing defenses. So I definitely think that was an upgrade. And I think that Kevin Steele fits with Nick Saban and the Alabama program more than Pete Golding did.
Yeah, right. And what they need right now, when you're trying to find what got you to the top, here's a guy that was there when you were at the top. Not to say that Pete wasn't, but it just hasn't been the same since since Pruitt left. All right, final thought before we move on with the show. And quickly, Nate Oats contract extension. I thought the timing was, it was weird. I mean, normally you do that at the end of the season. not a week after getting blown out on the road at Oklahoma. With that said, though, I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's the best coach Alabama's had, and I'm glad to know that he's going to be around longer. Why now, though?
Well, I mean, commitment. There are various reasons it could be, but to me, I think a lot of it probably is. Let's go ahead and get him locked in now. Let's make it more difficult for one of these bigger programs to come in and try to steal him away. And I'd certainly think that by him going ahead and inking this contract, when he knows that he's going to be pursued by other schools, he can make himself a lot more desirable had he held off on this contract extension and raise. He certainly could have done that and made himself more appealing. But at the same time, I think he's committed to Alabama, and I think Alabama wanted to return the favor and show that they're committed to him. So I think is it strange timing? Sure. But the bottom line is Nate Oats is locked into a much longer term contract with a much deserved raise, and it's going to keep him around in Tuscaloosa for a little bit longer.
Yeah, good news. Good news for Alabama basketball, because they're not going to get a better coach than Nate Oats. Anything that I didn't ask you, or anything that you're working on that you want to tell everyone about?
You pretty much covered it, Mick. We've got things rolling. It's the off season, but this is, and I'll continue to reiterate this. I've said it multiple times. This is going to be one of the most fascinating, interesting off seasons that Alabama has had during the Nick Saban era, because there's so many different storylines. You're replacing your best defensive player, your best offensive player, your field general on defense, and Henry To'oTo'o. Both your coordinators, it's very different styles of coordinator compared to what you had before. How does the roster look different? How does the approach, how is that going to look? Can Alabama get back on top? Everybody thinks that the dynasty is starting to end. How does Alabama approach things compared to Georgia, who's trying to go for like a three-peat, or at least keep this, mini, I wouldn't call it a dynasty yet, unlike some people, but whatever it is that they've got going, can they keep that going? And just, this power battle to see you can kind of hold, the superpower spot, the top of the king of the mountain, I guess, in the SEC. And I certainly think Alabama continues to be involved in that conversation, but it's going to be fascinating to watch throughout the entire offseason. So if you're not already a part of BamaInsider.com and the Talk of Champions message boards, I would certainly get on board as quickly as possible, because we got some great conversations going on over there.
All right, thanks, Clint. And with that said, perfect transition from you to your partner over there on the message board, Jimmy Stein, going to join us here coming up. But guys, don't forget $29.99 from right now until August 31st as we change the face of team coverage. And I promise you, this thing is, we're rolling right now. It's going to continue to roll, and we're going to blow the doors off of it before this thing's all said and done. So we invite you to join us for the new world order of team sites. And as I told Jay Barker many times, that is not a political group. It was a wrestling group. But find out for yourself. $29.99 from now until August 31st, and $9.99 a month if you just want to dip your toe in there. Thank you, Clint.
Absolutely, mate. Good talking to you, brother.
You too, man. Great stuff. Always great stuff when we hang out. Guys, show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums, and we're on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. Hit the bell so you know when we are live. All right, let's continue the conversation of Monday night quarterback and Alabama talk with Jimmy Stein. He is the dean of our coverage, and you guys would know that from the message boards and everything else. Love the helmet back there. Is that an 18 helmet?
That's an 18. That's 8.
Who signed
18.
it?
Nick Saban, actually.
Oh, nice.
How about that? They're going to they might bury me with that thing.
Would you bury it with you wearing it, or would you just be holding it?
I'm not much of a football helmet wearer. But I'll go with holding it, but I probably won't be around for that decision. So we'll see what my quote unquote loved ones do to me at that point.
Yeah. Hey, well, that would make headlines if you did. Pun intended.
I like it.
All right. Well, good to see you as always. We got a lot to talk about. We just got Clint's opinion on these hires, and let's get yours. But before that, guys in the message board, friends in the message board, ladies in the message board, questions, comments, love to see them. We love the engagement. Roll Tide to all you guys, and keep it going as we hang out. Make sure that, again, that you give us a thumbs up as the show rolls on. All right, Let's start with the offensive coordinator. Kind of a surprise. I think this was a bigger surprise than the defensive coordinator, but Tommy Rees from Notre Dame is now Alabama's offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised at the name. This was not a name that was discussed beforehand. I remember the very first moment I heard it, I was shocked. But, after shock, you start thinking through things. And the fact of the matter is, maybe we should have not assumed, but maybe included him before in speculation, because Nick Saban himself in November on his coach's show, he described what he was looking for post Bryce back. I think it was LSU week. He said post Bryce, this is his own words. He said, after Bryce, I think we need to get back to running the football and maybe a lot of RPOs. We didn't really run a lot of RPOs with Bryce. We ran what I would call zone reads, which basically meant, yes, we did have run pass options, but the option was really Bryce reading a defensive player and deciding whether to hand the ball off or throw it. A real RPO, as I consider it, I bet as Nick Saban considers it, is the quarterback going to run the ball or pass it. And we really didn't do that at all under Bryce. As a matter of fact, in 2 seasons, Mick, I don't think there was a single designed quarterback run that was called in all of Bryce's 2 years, which is sort of crazy when you consider how athletic Bryce is. But nevertheless, Nick said he wants to run the ball and have an offense that's sort of built around the RPO. That is Tommy Rees. It's a great description of what Tommy Rees did during his time at Notre Dame. What I like most about Coach Rees is I've spent a lot of time researching him. And frankly, I knew a little bit about him, to be honest. I knew a little bit about him, probably more than most Alabama fans, because as you know, I do some work for QB Country on the side. One of our QB Country quarterbacks is Drew Pine, who's Notre Dame's quarterback this past year. So I paid a lot of attention to Drew's career, kind of pulling for him as part of the QB Country family. And so I knew a lot about Drew's situation at Notre Dame. He, of course, left when the season's over. He's transferring to Arizona State. But I was familiar with Tommy Rees and Notre Dame through QB Country and Drew Pine. But I've researched him even further since he's been hired by Alabama. And what I like most, Mick, is he's young, so he's sort of new school because of his age in terms of this RPO stuff. I think he has a very advanced understanding of RPOs and 2023 offenses. But at the same time, he's old school because for a young offensive coordinator, he likes to run the ball. He likes ball control. He likes an offense that doesn't give the game away. And he sort of reminds me of a good fit in what Nick Saban and this offense used to do before the freak quarterbacks like Tua and Mac Jones and Bryce Young showed up. So I think he's a really interesting combination of new school and old school, which may be exactly what Alabama needs right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think you make some good points. Well, the guy that's taking over the defense, Kevin Steele, is someone that it seems like every SEC team is familiar with, and even a lot of teams in the ACC. I mean, this is a lifer. This is a guy that's been one of the best defensive coordinators in college football for a long time.
Yeah, sure is. He has a extensive resume, but what I like most about the Kevin Steele, hire is that I feel that when you look over his expansive resume, I think he hit his peak so far when he was at Auburn, which is an extremely close job to Alabama, recruit a lot of the same players. From 2016 to 2020, he was super consistent. Auburn's defense under Kevin Steele for those 5 consecutive seasons were very good. What's even more amazing is they were very good and did not have the talent level to support that. He really coached Auburn, I think, above the sum of their parts, if that makes sense, which makes excellent coaching. When you can get the unit to perform better than their talent level suggests they should, I think he did it for 5 straight years. That's really, really hard to do. He will never have had the players that he will get to coach at Alabama this fall. That's exciting. He's sort of old school Nick Saban. When I say old school, I mean 2007 to 2017 Alabama. I mean the original plan, the MTAQ Alabama. That's really him. He's very organized, very disciplined, and I think he's exactly what Alabama needs at this time. In terms of an upgrade or not, I certainly do not believe in any way it's a downgrade from Pete Golding. And again, this is an Alabama talent level that I'm sure he's going to really appreciate. Anybody looking back at what Miami did this year, you're probably just off the track a little bit. Look, Miami's previous staff, the Manny Diaz era, they were fired for losing, which normally means they don't have enough good players.
Right.
And you're not going to fix that in season one. Now Miami's going about it, fixing it now with, obviously they're very aggressive with NIL. They were never going to fix that one season. Kevin Steele was basically hired into a mess, and it takes more than 1 year to clean up the mess. So don't put too much stock in what Kevin Steele did at Miami in 2022, just like you wouldn't put too much stock in what Kevin Steele did at Alabama in 2007 when Nick Saban was hired to sort of clean up and straighten up what had been happening prior to his arrival. So I like it. I think based on the fact Nick Saban was always going to hire someone that had worked for him and this defense in the past, this was probably about as good a result as you could hope for once it became clear that Jeremy Pruitt isn't quite yet hireable just yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And the other thing, Nick Saban never fires coaches. Sometimes they leave, but a lot of times they come back. You don't see that with every program. But you know what? He goes out of his way to keep good relationships no matter what happened when the coach was there. To think of a guy coming for 3 stints is pretty crazy.
And they stayed close throughout. A little birdie told me, some inside scoop. During those years, Kevin Steele was at Auburn. Actually, Nick Saban and Kevin Steele talk frequently. And that's not unusual. That's not like crazy. That's not treason. That's literally how coaching works.
Yeah.
They're all, you can call it friends, you can call it acquaintances, but they're professional relationships. And there's information to share. There's checking up on your people. But Kevin Steele and Nick Saban know each other really well. And maybe that's what Nick Saban needs right now. Nick Saban doesn't know Tommy Reese at all. Tommy Reese is a brand new name. He'll be a brand new fixture here in Tuscaloosa, a brand new personality. But Kevin Steele is not. He's been gone a while, but Kevin Steele is very much a part of Nick Saban's Alabama. And maybe it's a good mixture when you're bringing in somebody brand new and someone young, like a Tommy Reese on one side of the ball. Maybe it makes a ton of sense to bring back an old friend on the other side of the ball, particularly someone's been around the block. He's coached at Tennessee. He's coached at Auburn. He's coached at LSU.
Right.
Back at Alabama for round 3. Also coached at Clemson and Miami, 2 more programs in the Southern United States. I think the Kevin Steele hire sort of fits with the Tommy Reese hire. You're bringing in somebody young and new, bring back an old friend too.
Do we have any more moves coming?
Maybe. Strong maybe. And this is why, not inside scoop here. This is just, looking at the makeup of the staff, right? Kevin Steele has primarily coached linebackers in his career. Primarily. He has coached the secondary in the past, in the distant past. But he's primarily a linebacker coach. Well, you already have Coleman Hutzler returning as an outside linebacker coach. You've hired Austin Armstrong from Southern Miss. He has been, in his brief career, really young guy, even younger than Tommy Reese. He's always been a linebacker coach. So it looks like on defense right now, you have 3 linebacker coaches, Steele, Armstrong, and Hutzler. You got T-Rob back coaching the corners. There's no one to coach safeties. Well, you have a couple of options. T-Rob can coach the whole secondary. That wouldn't be too much for a guy like himself who's been a co-defensive coordinator in the past. T-Rob's smart guy. He's coached in the Nick Saban defense forever because he used to work for Will Muschamp, who coaches the Nick Saban defense. So maybe T-Rob coaches the whole secondary. Or maybe Kevin Steele coaches the safeties, leaving Armstrong and Hutzler to coach the linebackers. That's possible because Steele has coached safeties in the distant past. Or maybe we're not done with all the staff changes yet, and you bring in a new guy to coach the safeties, which means somebody's got to be on the way out. It could be any of those three, but we can't rule anything out or anything in until we know for sure.
You guys want to join the party at BamaInsider.com. Jimmy's on there all the time. He's got his spring roster rankings there, $29.99. You sign up now, and you got access all the way until August 31st. That's great. I mean, that gets you right up to football season and kickoff, or $9.99 a month. However you want to do it, we'd love to see you as part of that. Give us kind of a sneak preview of what your spring roster rankings look like.
Yeah, started it today. Hey, I worked on this for a while. I've done this every year at Bama Insider since On3 and On3 and Bama Insider On3 came on the scene. I started this back then. And what I'm doing is I'm literally ranking the roster. I just start with, okay, who's the best player on this football team based on what we've seen in the games and what maybe we've learned from practices. You know, who's the best player on the team? That's number one. Okay, who's number two? Who's number three? I do it all the way down to the bottom. And you know, I'm not a big fan, by the way, of saying, hey, these are the guys at the bottom of the roster. But hey, maybe it's also motivation to move up, right? So today we started with number 59, 58, and 57. And we went over and had a long, big story on Bama Insider about who those guys are. And we're going to continue it all the way. There's the story there. And we did have Elijah Brown at the bottom as a picture of him as a prospect. But, you know, these rankings aren't too fair to guys who redshirted this previous season because we hadn't seen a whole lot of them, right?
Right.
So I made mention that's a little unfair to Elijah because I hadn't seen a lot of them, didn't play any in the games this past fall. But, hey, if you're going to have a number one and you're going to have a first, somebody's got to be a last. This spring is a great opportunity for him to move up. But we're going to rank every scholarship player all the way to number one. We're not including the signees yet. Why not? Because we're only including players that have had extensive spring practices, fall camps, or have played in games. We will add in the freshmen this summer in a new ranking after all the freshmen and signees have been out there for spring practices. But really enjoy doing this. It's a real popular thing to do. Everybody gets involved in discussing each guy's. Today we talked about Elijah Brown. We talked about Theo Jones-Bell. We talked about Anquan Barnes today. But we will count down 3 players a day until we get to number one. And when we get to number one, we'll just be a week or 2 weeks away from spring practice.
Wow. And the funny thing is number one's going to be a lot different than last year's number one and number two. Yeah, it was such an easy pick. You know, this year, maybe there could be a little drama, you know, with the final few guys.
Wasn't easy. I spent literally 10 days. I came up with the draft, and each day for 10 days, I would review the draft and make changes. And I made changes all the way up until when I started putting together the actual pieces this morning. And some of those were near the top. And here's an interesting one. Where do you rank the kicker? Will Reichard, probably the best kicker in the history of University of Alabama football. Maybe that's worthy of ranking him number one.
Oh, Jimmy. You cannot rank him number one.
I did not rank him. Spoiler. He cannot. But he's close.
But he's good, though. He is good. He's close.
He's close to number one.
Close. All right. Well,
he's the greatest kicker ever in Alabama football history.
He's been very good. I'm glad he's coming back. All right. Anything else that you want to add before we talk some recruiting? There's some bad news today in recruiting. We're going to get into that with Joseph Hastings. You know, we lost a guy. We're going to talk about that. But anything else?
Looking forward to Hastings' take on Martavius Collins' news for sure. And, man, the offseason, I know it sounds crazy because, you know, this is the offseason. We have 6 weeks till spring practice. I love the offseason. I can find a ton of stuff to talk about. We have meetings all the time at On3. Hey, here's what you guys can talk about during the offseason. I've got plenty of stuff to talk about. I mean, I love the anticipation of the season and the long countdown to it. And we talk about it every single day on the Talk of Champions message board.
Yep. And that's BamaInsider.com, guys. So swing over there, Jimmy. Great work as always. And we'll talk to you next Monday.
Thanks a lot, Mick.
Thank you. I can't wait to see who number 1 is. It is not going to be Will Reichert. Put our foot down, but it's going to be interesting because we don't have Bryce Young or Will Anderson Jr. to throw into those spots anymore. Guys, as you hang out with us here on the message board, love to see all you guys get those comments in there. Just chime in on the conversation as we roll on. Like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up. That's a way of, basically saying roll tide to us. Even if you're not a Bama fan and you're hanging out with us here for Monday Night Quarterback, thank you for giving the thumbs up. And make sure you hit the bell so that you know every time we go live. And as these coordinators, when they were announced, boom, right on the air. Kyle and Clint giving you, kind of the breaking news information. We do that on this channel each and every day. So make sure you hit the bell. All right, let's bring them on. We talk with this man every single week about recruiting. A lot to talk about today, obviously, with some new people that'll be leading the way on offense and defense, but always good to see you. Joseph Hastings, what's up, dude?
Mick, I'm doing excellent today. I just have to chime in. Look, I do have some inside intel into Jimmy's spring roster breakdown. Will Reichert is number 1. I do have to, have to get a sneak peek. Yes, he is going to be the number 1 player on that feature.
Listen, I won fantasy football. I don't know if I'm ever going to play it again, but I took a kicker pretty high because I wanted this particular kicker because I think he's the best in the NFL, and I'm talking about Tucker. Yeah, Justin Tucker. I had to have him, right? And it paid off. I mean, Mr. Consistency. So I get it. I mean, a kicker could be as important as he is to Baltimore's team. Could be that important to Alabama this year. But if the kicker is the best player on your team, that's not a good sign as for what could happen during the course of the season.
Oh, of course. I mean, look, I don't really like talking too much about kickers with the Dallas Cowboys and Bill, Brett Maher, what he did. But look at the importance of kickers. If Will is able to make that field goal against Tennessee, you're looking at a completely different, season potentially for Alabama. So that's the potential effect of a kicker. But hey, I don't know what Jimmy's going to do. I really don't. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to be. Will's not going to be number 1.
Can't wait. I can't wait. We'll be talking about this every week up until, we get to number 1. All right. Well, look, you talk to the recruits all the time. This is your arena. What's the reaction? We'll start with, both. We'll talk. I want to ask about both coordinators, but let's start with Tommy Rees. What's the offensive player's reaction to Tommy Rees as Alabama's offensive coordinator?
Yeah, so we weren't able to speak with Perry Thompson, the wide receiver commit for Alabama, but Andrew Bone, our Bama Insider Director of Recruiting, did catch up with Julian Sayin, the one of the best quarterbacks in the country, somebody that we talked about over the past couple of weeks. And, Julian said, about Tommy Rees, he was my lead recruiter, and he was heavily considering Notre Dame early in his recruitment. Sam went on to say, I really liked him. I thought he and I meshed well together. He's a great guy and a great young offensive mind. So, that's pretty interesting, especially when you're talking about the leader of Alabama's class or one of the leaders of Alabama's class moving forward and just his reaction to the hire. Definitely somebody who Alabama fans should be happy about with Julian Sayin, and they should be happy with those quotes as well, that he kind of has that trust and established relationship with Tommy Rees. And you're just looking at projecting this going forward and how, some other offensive targets and, players may react to the news. It just seems like, Alabama did a pretty good job of bringing in somebody who's young, somebody who, appears to be pretty active on the recruiting trail, seems to embrace it. Doesn't have too much of a social media presence, but, just in terms of building those relationships, seems to be doing a pretty good job. But, so Sayin liked what he has seen and heard thus far from Tommy Rees, but reiterated, he had trust in Coach Saban from the beginning. He had told us, as soon as shortly before his commitment, we had talked, and he said, even if Bill O'Brien does leave for the NFL, which ended up happening, that he had complete trust in Coach Saban. And I think he has trust in Coach Saban with this hire as well. And it also helps that they have an established relationship. So, definitely checked off the boxes there for Julian Sayin.
Yeah, I'm excited about Julian Sayin. I mean, I'm buying into the hype. I think that this guy's going to be a difference maker when he does arrive in Tuscaloosa, and we'll see. We got some difference makers already here, but the cream rises to the crop. That's what Macho Man told us. The famous video that I see constantly on Facebook. Right, the cream rises to the top. Oh yeah. So eventually he'll be there, right? All right. You know Macho Man.
Yeah, I honestly, I think I've seen the Facebook video, but I don't know if I know too much about Macho Man.
Okay. He was a Slim Jim rep and a wrestler for a long time. But anyway, look, you Google him when we get off here. You'll love him. He was fantastic.
You know, as a 25-year-old, I get told that a lot. You got to watch. You got to look up this person, and I just kind of nod my head. I'm like, yeah, right.
Hey, this guy was amazing. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the new hire, Kevin Steele, as the defensive coordinator. Reaction to that from some of the commitments.
Yeah, so it was actually interesting. I got to talk with Alabama signee Julian Pierre, who recently, earned his 5-star ranking on the On3 consensus. And, we are allowed to talk to signees who are not enrolled at the University of Alabama. And, Pierre is one of the 4 who hasn't enrolled, will be coming in the summer. But, he pretty much told me that he doesn't know too much about Kevin Steele thus far. But, he told me he has a pretty good history. So I know it's going to be good with him coming in. And this was the good one. Being back for the Tide, he's going to make a statement, just kind of re-emphasizing, just Kevin Steele coming back to Alabama for his 3rd stint and, just kind of the impact that someone like Julian Pierre can envision them having, wanting to make a statement there. So, Andrew Bone also talked with Jalen Mbakwe and Sterling Dixon, a couple of top 100 commitments for Alabama. Sterling actually had a previous relationship with Kevin Steele, said that they were talking going back to his time at Auburn a few years ago, which is pretty interesting. But, so Dixon has a previously established relationship there. And Jalen Mbakwe said, great pickup. He said that Steele was recruiting him at Miami and they were just getting to know each other. So, that's pretty good. That's kind of what you want. You want to see, is there an established relationship there, establish trust, establish a bond, and how can you further build upon it, especially knowing that, Kevin Steele, Coach Steele is going to be active on the recruiting trail. I think that's pretty important when you're talking about commitments. I don't know if Perry Thompson was too familiar with Tommy Rees. I don't believe Notre Dame was pushing too hard in that one before he committed to Alabama. But just in terms of those four commitments that we have so far, 3 of them, say that they have established relationships with those new coordinators, which is pretty good. That's what you want to hear.
Well, today we got the news that Martavius Collins decommitted from Alabama. I've seen they slipped from number 1 and to number 2.
Yeah.
Because of that. What happened there? I mean, is this a result of Reese's hire? He's a tight end, right? I mean, isn't this guy? I mean, he just coached baby Gronk. I mean, what's up?
No. This was not a result of Tommy Reese's hire at Alabama. This is something that we had kind of expected for a little bit. Not saying it was going to be a guarantee or anything like that, but it was something that we wouldn't have been surprised if it happened, and it did happen earlier today. Martavius had previously set up a visit to Alabama for January 28th for the junior day. He never ended up attending that one. Didn't really know why that happened. He visited Auburn, earlier in the month in January, on January 14th, instead of going to Alabama's first junior day. So, you can kind of tell, this was something that was, a little bit anticipated. But look, Andrew Bone reported today that Alabama's not expected to further pursue Martavius Collins. So that's kind of noteworthy. We'll see where he ends up going, and best of luck to him at the next level. But, the goal for the Crimson Tide is to potentially sign 2 tight ends in this recruiting cycle. We'll see what they do. We know that they signed Ty Lockwood out of high school in December, and then brought in Maryland transfer CJ Dipper a little bit later in the month. So, when you talk about the tight end position for Alabama, even though they signed 4 in 2022 and 2 in 2023, it's a position that they, are going to have to reload at in terms of adding more depth and adding more skill at the position. So, look for them to be pretty active with tight ends in the 2024 cycle. And, once again, best of luck to Martavius Collins, but I don't really expect him to wind up back with the Crimson Tide. That's not
whose decision do you think this was? Was this all his, or do you think Alabama played part of this? Or, do you know?
It could be a little bit of both. We'll see if something happens, if anything gets out there. But, just in terms of, the actual commitment and decommitment, he had committed a little bit earlier than maybe we anticipated. It was kind of a surprise
Mhm.
when it happened. Especially, I keep on sounding like a broken record, but this time last year, Alabama had 1 commit, and they had entered January with 5 commitments. They had entered February with 5 commitments. So they were a little bit ahead of pace. Martavis didn't get back on campus last month, so that was kind of a telltale sign. There's always a little bit of gray in these situations here, but with Alabama not expecting to pursue him, we'll see what ultimately ends up happening with the tight end position. But they have a lot of great options. There's a lot of great talent on the table, and they've offered about a dozen players at the position. So once again, expect for them to be pretty active.
Hey, good stuff as always. Anything else that you want to add before we get off here tonight? Anything that I didn't ask you, or anything that you're working on right now on BamaInsider.com that you want to highlight?
No, just, talking a little bit about, 2024 prospects, 2025 prospects. We're going to be having some individual updates on guys in those classes, and maybe catch up with Keon Keeley. We'll see if he answers the phone. I know he's been pretty busy with everything that he's doing, but I'd love to get his reaction, to the hire, since I know that, Miami is a school that was recruiting him last year. Would definitely be interested in hearing what he has to say about Kevin Steele. But for the most part, we're kind of talking about the coordinators, getting the reactions there. And then later this month is, I get excited about these camp events. I'm going to be going out to Under Armour Atlanta. That's going to be at the end of the month. And then I'm going to be going to Under Armour Orlando the following week. So back-to-back weekends, they're going to be talking to some top Alabama commits and targets there. So definitely be sure to be on the lookout for that. And I may be going out to a 7-on-7 tournament this weekend. I know it's the Super Bowl this weekend. Once again, I have zero interest in football right now. So I will probably be there in West Palm Beach covering this tournament if there's some good players coming out. But yeah, just expect that this month. Me being on the road a little bit, catching up with some 2024 and 2025 targets.
You can just submerge yourself in, Alabama recruiting and on 3 stuff, and just kind of stay away from this big football game that's coming up Sunday, which I'm going to enjoy. I mean, I'm going to a big party. It's going to be great. I don't have a dog in the fight, although Patrick Mahomes did help me win my fantasy league, which I'm going to brag about because it took 20 years to get one. And about all but 5 years of your life, right? And I finally got it done. I don't know if I'm ever going to play again, but I've got a pull for Pat Mahomes. But at the same time, I like all these Alabama guys on the Eagles. Unlike you, it's like if the Eagles won, it would be heartbreaking.
Once I am rooting for Jalen Hurts to have a Tom Brady versus Eagles 2017 Super Bowl, like throw for 500 yards, 5 TDs, have a great game, and Devontae Smith too. As long as they come up maybe a point or so short.
That's a Cowboys fan. That's the Cowboys fan in you.
I'm just kidding. Once again, rooting for Alabama's guys. Hopefully they do well. And honestly, I don't even care about the result. The Cowboys don't deserve. The Eagles have been just a well-run organization.
Yeah.
This whole century, we have not been. So good. If the Eagles win, they deserve it. They absolutely do deserve it.
Just don't count out Mahomes, is all I'm saying.
No, definitely not. Even on a bum ankle, he's special.
No, he's special, man. But you know what? So is Jalen Hurts. Somebody asked me today, if you could have a quarterback to start your NFL franchise, who would you take, him or Tua? I mean, it was like, hey, it's easy. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't take a Jalen Hurts right now. His ability to run and throw, and he's durable, and he's proven himself to be one of the best.
If you asked me that a year ago, I would have been a little bit hesitant, just especially after the Buccaneers playoff game. But look, he put in the work in the offseason, worked with Tom Brady's trainer, and the results have shown. And look, it's so funny about him because like he's like built like a running back, and I don't want to I know people were clamoring back in the day like, hey, he should play a position other than quarterback, but he's like built like a running back in terms of like his legs and how thick he is. And when you're projecting him long term, you're like, okay, he can sustain the punishment of the NFL that would bring him because of how he's built. He's one of the best in the squat room, and he can handle that punishment. I know he had the shoulder injury, but I think he'll be pretty durable his career when compared to maybe like a Lamar Jackson who's a little bit skinnier.
Yeah, I still remember him carrying those Bulldogs into the end zone to win the SEC championship game. You know, one of those normal Alabama-Georgia games where we rip the heart out of the dog at the end. So, you know, who knows? Maybe that'll be the case on Sunday night when he takes on the Chiefs, right?
We'll
you got right. You got the Andy Reid Bowl or the Kelsey Bowl. Either way, there's just a lot of storylines here. It should be a really fun night for a Super Bowl, and you'll be out pounding the pavement. Hey, if you guys want to find out what's going on with recruiting, you can do that. You can hang out on the message board, everything that we do at BamaInsider.com. Check it out. And let me remind you again, $29.99 from right now until August 31st. We're changing the face of team coverage, and we want you guys to be a part of it. We got a lot more surprises coming. This thing's going to be bigger and better than you could have ever imagined, with the best in the business here as part of what we're doing. So find out for yourself right there at that discounted price, and have the inside on anything going on with the Crimson Tide. Joseph, great stuff from you, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I think it's pretty interesting that Rooted Fly comment about Jalen graduating from Oklahoma and being benched by Alabama. Look up Jalen's stats at Alabama. Over 7,000 all-purpose yards between running and passing. SEC Offensive Player of the Year in 2016. Part of a championship team. His resume at Alabama. Most college football players, most college quarterbacks would take that in a heartbeat. And look, he went to Oklahoma. I think that's one of those situations. I saw it commented a lot where both schools can claim them, Alabama and Oklahoma.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's one of those. But to say that he's all Oklahoma, no, that's not the case.
Not the case, guys. Not the case at all. He'll go down as an Alabama quarterback when he wins. Just ask him. All right. Well, look, again, like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, hit the bell so you know what's going on here on their channel. We appreciate it. Great stuff from Clint Lamb, Jimmy Stein, of course, Joseph Hastings, Chris Daughtry behind the scenes. For everyone with On 3 and the guy that puts our channel together in this show, Kyle Henderson, I'm Mick Gillespie. Thanks for hanging out. We'll do it again next Monday night. Tomorrow, Andrew Bone, the guru of Alabama recruiting, and his show will be on the channel, so make sure that you are here when it comes on, and we'll keep you covered. Anything going on Alabama, we'll have it for you right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Roll Tide, everybody. Good night.